You start. Good, we'll start with roll call.
Will Barrett,
I am here.
Jeff Carey,
Here.
Bob Wilkerson,
Here.
Mike Hill,
Joe.
Randy Lewis.
Here. All right, we have all 5 members of the PAC here, so we do have a quorum. I'm looking around the room and we do not exceed 40 people, so we are good to go from a safety perspective. So with that, I have the members had a chance to review the addendum or we have approval of minutes. I'm sorry, approval of minutes. Thanks. So let's go through, and I will just note that we do have a change. These are March minutes, not May minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but March 3 minutes, if everyone had a chance to read the minutes from the draft minutes for the March meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 3rd, 2025.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. March 17th minutes, it was drafted. People had an opportunity to review those.
So make a motion for the March 17th, 2025 meeting minutes. To approve them.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The March 31st meeting minutes.
Yeah, move to approve.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
And 14 April 2025.
Your turn, Mike. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 14th.
Is there a second?
I'll second
All in favor?
it.
Aye. The 4 minutes stand approved as written. So any changes to the agenda, commissioners? I would just note that the 3 minutes are actually March 3rd, 17th, and 31st, not May.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda for May 19th, 2025.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any, so the agenda stands approved with a minor adjustment to the month on the first 3 minutes. Does any, do the commissioners have any conflict of interest?
No.
Nope. No. Next meeting is on the 16th of June. It will be a regular meeting. Committee and staff updates.
Like you mentioned, June 16th meeting, that will be non-comp plan related work session on, it's gonna be on an amendment to the development regulations regarding solar panels, I believe.
Solar arrays, solar farms, like large. Which we currently don't have any regulations at all, so. My lead planner and I are going to be presenting along with the applicants on some code amendments, but we'll just do a work session before scheduling a public hearing. So you can understand the project type, and then we'll probably follow that up later on with wind. We've got another host of corporate wind farms. That's a possibility they may want to propose. They're very different things, so different amendments.
Okay.
And then for the public, if you are, especially if you're new, if you haven't been to one of these meetings before, please make sure you sign up at the podium. So Mariah here knows who you are if you come up to speak. I just wanted to let everyone know too that the PAC received 2 comment letters, one from Crane Bennett and PUD 1. And those were submitted to the PAC Friday and Sunday.
Right, yeah, one of the letters came in late Friday after staff had gone home for the weekend. They included me on the distribution, and when I saw it yesterday, I did send it out to the PAC members along with staff. I understand I I may have violated a little protocol, but I felt it was very important to get the information out. And I thank you, staff, for posting it so everyone can see what's out there.
And then before we get into, Sharifa's full recap presentation, I did want to let everybody know that SCJ is still, and the CPAT is still working on the, planning element, the goals and the policies. She does have some interviews set up, or she's in the process of setting up some interviews with some industry experts as well. So we still have more information. This is a very, very early draft that you're seeing. And then after, it depends on how the PAC wants to do it, but after we get to reach out and want to do questions, and then we talk about the goals and policies. But staff has some initial recommendations on the plans and policies so far that we're gonna also review. So I just wanted to give everybody a little heads up on that. And then.
And are we in a position, do you know which industries or which companies that the CPAT or SCJ may be reaching out to, just to give the folks a flavor? If that's releasable, that's great. If not, that's fine too.
It's true, yeah. I mean, they can be on the CPAT if they want, you know, so, I believe Green Diamond has, interview set up, or if they have one yet, I'm not sure if they have it yet, but Green Diamond, Taylor Shellfish, I believe, and, I just transmitted, PUD1 manager information to as well.
Yeah, and I can add to that. I have a list here. So in addition to PD1, Green Diamond, we have the Sierra Pacific Industries. We have a meeting with them scheduled on the books for this week. We have Taylor Shellfish. We have the Washington Forest Protection Association. And then we are also, they're not scheduled yet, but we've reached out to members or representatives from the Skokomish Indian Tribe and the Squaxin Island Tribe, just to make sure that we get their feedback and input on anything related to the cultural practices and all the things that we want to make sure that we include and cover in our plan. And this is a starter list, so we welcome more. We have the time and capacity to conduct more one-on-one interviews for any areas where we can find gaps in our plan. At the end of the day, we want to produce something that is reflective of what's needed locally, and the best resources for that knowledge is the local experts in Mason County. So we're open to it. I reiterate what I said the last time we met with you all. This process is not meant to be a silo. It's not meant to be exclusive. We want to open up to anyone who has valuable input to help us create a better plan for the county.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, anything else? Commissioners, any general updates from any of you? With this, a couple of things. One, I know he's not here tonight, but Mark Neary, thank you very much for 4 years of service to Mason County. He's going to be moving on to PUD out in Grace Harbor County. So they win and we have a loss, but that's all right. It opens another opportunity to bring another superstar in, and I'm sure our Board of Commissioners will work that. There are two pieces of legislation that have gone through, been signed by the governor, House Bill 1491 on transit-oriented housing, and Senate Bill 5148, it's growth management and housing elements. Both have some very specific language. And just as we move forward, we just need to make sure that whatever's appropriate is covered. The first one may not apply to Mason County, but likely does for Shelton. The second one, though, has some very specific language with regards to what I'm going to call root cause analysis, particularly with people potentially being dislocated and what has to go into that. So we'll want to just be mindful when we get that far in our comp plan. Okay, that's all there. Anything else? Yes, good. We have no other business tonight. So with that, I would like to open this up for public comment. This public comment is for non-topic items on the agenda tonight. So if you have something dealing with the climate resilience element, please hold that. That we'll get to later. I ask that you limit your discussion to 3 minutes. Just identify who you are and about where you live in the county. I do not want your home address and personal information. Please keep that. But we just like to know who you are. And tonight we are going to start with Emily.
Hi, I'm currently a Mason County resident. As Mason County continues its comprehensive plan update, it's critical that we hear from voices that are too often left out of the conversation, our youth. That's why we're hosting a youth employment roundtable on June 3rd at Olympic College from 3 until 5 p.m. Focused on gathering insight from Cedar High School students about their lived experiences and perspectives on employment opportunities in our area. This event is meant to provide a safe and respectful space for students to speak honestly about the challenges and possibilities they see in our community. Only the students will have the floor to speak, followed by a brief presentation by Pacific Mountain Workforce Development Council on local learning and career resources for youth exploring their next steps after high school. We will invite key local leaders and stakeholders to attend and listen so that future decisions around employment and economic opportunity in Mason County are shaped with a more inclusive and representative perspective. These students are the future of our workforce and their voices matter. Thank you for your time.
And if I may, this opportunity here was specifically set up. Kevin Schutte, our executive director of the Economic Development Council, was in the room when we first talked about economic development. He heard our students loud and clear, our youth, and this is a result of your voices being heard in the action by our Economic Development Commission, along with businesses that they have involved with. So thank you very much for hosting this, and we'll get the word out.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Mr. Ramirez.
That's me. My name is Alan Ramirez. I live in the Shelton area. And really, I'm just here for one thing, since this is just a regular public comment. I just wanted to invite all of you to Cedar High School's ECP. It stands for Experience Cedar Project. Think of it as like a science fair, but for all the projects that Cedar students have done throughout the year. It's tomorrow. It's from 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. We're gonna have a little cookout there. So I would invite you all to come and see what our students here are doing at Cedar High School.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Ms. Gale.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julianne Gale. I live in North Mason, and I really want to appreciate all the hard work that the PAC is doing, the consultants are doing, the staff is doing, and also make a request around process. By the time I go home tonight, I will probably have worked a 13-hour day, in part because I was preparing for the document that was originally published around the policy, and all the youth were making sure that they were prepared for this meeting. And it turns out we're not actually prepared for this meeting because there's a new document that has all of these things struck, and we can't prepare if we can't see things ahead of time. And so it's not really fair to me, to the educational opportunities for the children of this county, to be able to actually engage and feel like our voices matter when things are changing all the time with last minute notice. We really want to work together with all of us together in creating something that's good for all of us. And it's really exhausting and inefficient to have to redo everything over and over. And so just for the future, really hoping that staff and consultants can communicate ahead of time, so that we're not cross-referencing 3 different documents and trying to make sure that vulnerable populations and overburdened communities actually get their voices heard in government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gates. And I'll just comment is that, there is at the door, it's a packet that looks something like this. The PAC members received that as they walked in here, okay? I sat down with staff at 4:30 this afternoon. Our staff had just completed their initial review. So yes, I understand some of this is live. I also understand though that people are working very hard, and I know the five members sitting at this table have put in quite a few hours preparing for tonight. So, Mr. Ackley, I think you had your hand up? No. No, okay. Anyone else for a general public comment? Okay, anyone online with a general public comment, please raise your Zoom hand and to be recognized. See anyone? Seeing none and seeing none in the room, we will close the general public comment. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to our work section on the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. Tonight, we're looking at the initial draft climate resilience element. So with that, Steph. Well, let me pause 1 minute. So we will, I'm going to handle this a little different. And this is in response to some of the things that have had occurred, and very much Ms. Gale's comment is this evening. We'll take staff comments, SCJ and county staff. We will then maybe have a few brief questions by the PAC. But what I really want to do is I want to take the time to go through the modified goals and policies live. There's a hard copy in the back of the corner of the room where you signed in. We'll bring it up on the screen. And then once we have an opportunity to go through these, I will then open for public comment to bring us up to the most current information and to help not only anyone, well, to help everyone in the room, because I know gentlemen at this table, including myself, haven't read this in its entirety either. So with that, staff. Or three for whoever it's, you guys got it.
All right. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. About a month ago, I was here and presented some of the work that we were doing in general, the methodology that was proposed by Commerce that we were following very closely. And now we actually have a draft document that we've put together that compiles all our work that we've done. And we made sure that within that same document, we included also all the Excel spreadsheet, which is the background information of the work that we've done. The whole thing was about 100 pages. I know it's a lot, but it is also a lot of work that we have been working diligently on. So what I'm going to do today with this document is I'm not going to go through it, but I will walk through the structure of the document. So as everyone is reviewing it more closely, you're aware of what's in it and then what is mostly in the appendix or the worksheet. So if we look at the table of contents, the introduction provides an overview of the requirements from the state, and then it references some of the key documents and resources that we've been utilizing as references in preparing the Mason County climate sub-element. And then we go into Mason County's assets, and those are broken down into the 11 sectors that we talked about the last time I presented this to you. And Commerce highly recommends that we break down the assets into the sectors so we make sure that we don't miss big umbrellas that they would like us to address. After that, we go into the climate hazards and their impacts. So not every hazard listed, the 7 hazards that Commerce lists, not all of those were highlighted as high priority for Mason County. We've distilled the climate impacts that we identified here as high priority. So we have the drought, extreme heat, extreme storms or extreme precipitation, and the related flooding, sea level rise, and also added earthquakes. And then within the extreme heat, we also discussed the impacts of ocean acidification because that's very relevant to the shellfish industry and salmon in Mason County. And then we also talk about pests and pathogens because to the timber industry and all the forests in Mason County, those are also very critical, but we lump those under the umbrella of extreme heat. So in this section, the climate impacts, we go through each of these major hazards, and then we talk about the patterns. So what's been happening in the past up until now. We talk about the projections. So from now into the end of this century, what's expected to happen. And then based on those changes in climate patterns, what are the impacts to the assets that we have talked about in the earlier section. After we go through all of the major hazards and their impacts on the assets, we go through a brief methodology review of our vulnerability and risk assessment, but we don't dive into the details of those. We refer the reader to the appendix where they can see the spreadsheet that has each hazard and asset pair and what the assessment and analysis we've done for those. And then lastly, the bulk or the meat of this document really is the goals and policies. A comprehensive plan, the objective of it is to provide a set of goals and policies for the county to follow as we go in the future. So the goals and policies are the essence of this document. This is what we've been working on over the past month. What you've seen, this draft was done on May 9th and submitted to the PAC. Last Friday, we had a CPAC meeting, so we had gone through these, not all of them, just half of them during our meeting. We've already been starting to implement some edits to them. We've distributed the document to the entire CPAT, and they are reviewing it. They will return all their comments to the consultant, to myself. By the end of this week, we'll incorporate their comments. We'll incorporate the input that we're going to gather from all the focused meetings that we also have scheduled this week and potentially next week. And then all the comments that we're going to be receiving tonight from you all, from the county, from the public comments, all of these we'll start gathering and putting into this. One thing that I want to note is that we are due to submit a draft to Commerce in June. And I want to stress the word draft and that June is not our deadline to make any edits. If we don't get to meet with PUD in the next couple of weeks, we maybe can meet with them in July and we'll still have the time to incorporate their comments and make any edits that we need into the final document. In June, it's a major milestone. We will submit to Commerce a semi-complete draft, but it is a draft, so we'll have the time and opportunity to continue amending over the summer and into the fall. So that I'll open it to questions, or if Kel and Marissa want to go over their comments. Up to you.
Guys, do you have any questions on the format or the general how this was put together?
I think one question I have is, I understand from what's been presented, how it was put, it sounds like how it was put together. And question is why it was not put together in the same layout as the other elements of our comp plan. Where, for example, a lot of the material, the plans in the body, and then there's the appendix footnotes and what have you. Whereas in this document, sounds like it looks like there's a big piece of activity occurring in the appendix and not in the actual plan, plan portion. So I know that's a long question, but
Yeah, that's fine. I think one thing we wanted to be cautious about is we didn't want to make the element itself too long. And we wanted to make sure that we pull in the relevant and important information on which we built the goals and policies into the body of the document. But then there's another, say, 60 or 70 pages of background work that we thought was essential to still include in the final document, but we didn't want it to muddy or make the document too lengthy for someone to focus on the essence of what we're trying to achieve here. Does this answer your question?
it answers the question as to why.
Yeah, so let me try to ask a follow-up question along those lines is, then would it be safe to say that I'm looking at the table of contents, basically from page 8, climate impacts, through climate resilience goals and policies, it ends on page 48. Those 41 pages would actually be the true element put in the same format as the other elements, not in the format it's currently structured. But again, I think that's cut and paste and formatting, not content. And then the appendix And then the first 8 or so pages as a summary of what the county is would be excluded from this element.
Oh, you mean the background for the climate element and why we're doing the climate element?
The whole discussion of
Yeah,
what the county is, I mean,
and the assets.
it's more
Yeah,
like a standalone report, not an element
right.
comp plan.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a very good point. So, those say initial 8 pages are important for us to submit when we submit to Commerce because it's a standalone deliverable to Commerce with its standalone grant. But yes, when we incorporate this into the larger document of the final comprehensive plan for Mason County, it does make sense for us to remove some of the context and background information that could be repeated or too redundant with the rest of the information. Though, as part of the deliverable to Commerce, we want to make sure that we do include it so it provides the foundation for this grant that we're receiving for this work.
Okay. Mr. Bob?
In going through the document, you referenced the Mason County Emergency Management Plan and a couple of updates. And I noticed that there was some extreme similarities between the two documents. And I was thinking, why wouldn't you, on the element 9, reference the emergency management plan? Because that is a document that has been updated every 2 years, as opposed to putting all this stuff into the element 9. I mean, you could save a lot of paper by doing that. Or did I miss something?
When you say element 9, you mean the climate element, the document that we're talking about? I just want to be clear.
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe you're referring to the hazard mitigation plan, and we did use the hazard mitigation plan as a very important resource in putting this document together. However, the hazard mitigation plan itself does not satisfy the Commerce requirement for us to put together a climate element. And then there are some specific areas that the hazard mitigation plan does not address. The hazard mitigation plan focuses on some things in very great detail and specificity, but then there are other areas where it is lacking in terms of what the and what Commerce is asking for. For example, addressing the needs that are specific to vulnerable population. That is one of the things that we found as lacking in the hazard mitigation plan. Another thing is goals and policies relating to waste management in response to climate hazards. We found that those were lacking in the hazard mitigation plan. So we've done a thorough review of the hazard mitigation plan. We think it's an excellent document, but we're trying to use this as a complementary document. We're trying not to repeat the information there, but make sure that what we present in this climate element is complementary to what's presented there, but also satisfies the requirements from the state.
Now, did you talk with any of the people involved in the hazard mitigation documentation?
Obviously, we've been in direct contact with the county and county staff, but we're happy to look at specific folks who produce the hazard mitigation plan to make sure that our plan is in alignment. We've done our best effort to ensure that we're in alignment and not contradictory. But again, as part of this continuous effort that we're through right now and scheduling one-on-one meetings with relevant stakeholders, let's call them, we're happy to look into a representative from the team that worked on the 2023 hazard mitigation plan to ensure that what we have here is in alignment with that.
So you didn't talk to them and now you're going to?
Yeah, we're happy to. I'll add that to my list of stakeholders to reach out to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question. I read all the documentation sent by different folks and organizations. Seems to be several different points of view. Just wondering how that's going to be resolved, and the process to decide what ends up in this comprehensive plan piece, and who are the ultimate deciders on that? That's my question.
You make a recommendation of the board and the board adopts the plan.
So even on the, I'm sorry, even on the climate piece, right? I thought I heard words a few weeks ago that that's somebody else, or is that a different thing? Okay.
If I may, if I can expound, are you trying to sort out, if you will, how will we take this current draft, make it a revised draft, and ultimately make it a recommendation going to the board, at least from the PAC decision? Who is that, those authorities?
Not worries really, but got input, for example, PUD one and the timber folks. It seems like a lot of different points of view. I'm just wondering how we're going to resolve those, because you have to decide which.
You're talking about the Green Diamond and Chris.
I think that's a good question. And I think, part of it too is I would love to know how are we going to determine best science? Because there appears to be opposing views of what best science is.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The state does identify clear references for certain areas, so we'll make sure that those take precedent when available. This was actually a discussion that we had with the CPAT last Friday when we met about, finding the balance between conserving forests and also making sure that we do not hinder the work in the timber industry and striking that balance between the two, like the economic benefits, but also preserving nature. So we will try our best effort to collect information from both. Obviously, conserving forest is useful and is for the benefit of the timber industry after all. So we want to make sure that we're working out the timber industry in a sustainable way that does not negatively impact the overall ecosystems in Mason County. It is something that we are actively thinking about and how we strike that balance. We're collecting feedback from everybody and we're reviewing it and revising it among ourselves at the CPAT and the experts to make sure that we advance whatever we can in a way that works for most groups. And then again, going back to your comment about best available science, the state is explicit about certain areas, and then other areas will have to identify resources or specific references when available, or we will just say best available science, and then that will be an evolving reference, and it's on the county staff to ensure that whenever they're reviewing this, it is something that's the most relevant at that point.
Jeff? Anyone?
I had a question on this page, but maybe that's too specific for this.
Let's hold that for now.
Okay.
So when we look at climate hazards, and as I read through the sections that cover drought and flooding and et cetera, there's a lot of varying timeframes, varying scenarios used. The UW climate mapping tool for sea level rise has a 50-50 scenario and a 1% solution. Very different numbers, obviously, on time frame. Is there a reason that we are not utilizing the recommendation of the UW mapping tool as the basis? That is, specifically use the worst case carbon emissions and the planning time frame for our comp plan, 2045, 2050. I realize it's a little challenging. Why do we look out to 2100 and put some of those challenges out there? And I ask that because some of the actions are go address, for example, sea level rise. Don't build a road where you have sea level rise. Well, if my sea level rise is 8 inches, 2.5 feet or 5 feet, that's very different land masses that are being affected.
Right.
So why did we not follow the UW mapping tool guidance?
Can I ask you a question? When you say the UW mapping tool guidance you were saying that their recommendation is to use the worst case scenario? Is that what you're saying? Or their recommendation is to use the time frame that is relevant to
Their
our
statement is to use the highest, they have the two greenhouse gas emissions, they say use
Right.
something or the two. And
Mhm.
they use the time frame that's relevant for what you're doing. They discuss that they are fairly comfortable with the predictions for the first half of the century and much
Right.
less comfortable with the predictions for the second half for a variety of reasons.
Right.
Given that our time frame coincides with the middle of the century, give or take years, and their confidence level is higher, why don't we target those levels?
That's a good point. And so in some of the hazards that we reviewed, we actually used like we saw that the impacts, even with the lesser emission scenario for say mid-century, were impactful enough. So in those scenarios where even the low emission scenario was impactful, we tried to use that as reference just to convey the importance or how pressing the issue is that even with the low emission scenarios where relevant, we wanted to reference that and say even under low emission scenarios, this is a pressing issue. We could revise our numbers to make sure that we don't reference the 2100 dates and look at ones that are closer to mid-century. So it's more reflective of what's in this plan. That's definitely a revision that we can do for those specific items where we looked into later century to focus on just early and mid-century.
Inconsistencies don't really give us warm fuzzies.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
Inconsistencies do not give us any warm fuzzies. If you're short.
Yes.
Do what
All right. Yes. I just wanted to make sure I heard that terminology correctly.
Is a technical term here.
Yes. Yes, but we can definitely do that. We'll make sure that we revise all the references. And I just want to caveat that is that in some and it's very few, but that UW mapping tool, in some situations, they don't have the mid-century analysis. They only have late century. So in those, we'll use the late century, but where available, we'll revise all our numbers to mid-century to reflect the range for this plan.
When I read it, I read some of it being, everything's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when we talk about high heat, I think about my years, I lived in Montgomery, Alabama, or the northern part of Florida, or my time in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, or my 3 years in Okinawa, Japan. And I'm telling you, this is one beautiful, very moderate climate, even when it's 95 degrees. So things are perspective. That doesn't mean we don't have, when it's 95 degrees outside and say, 60% humidity, there are hazards. And as I get a little grayer on top, as long as I have my hair, it's going to become more of an issue for me. Time on planet will work against me, and that's another technical term. But that's everyone. I mean, if we start to say that 90 degrees or 95 is too warm, then I think we need to look at the folks from Phoenix and Las Vegas moving north, and we need to reassess our growth. I mean, there's a very high degree of perspective. Anyway, I'm off target.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go to Melbourne, Florida, and have 100% humidity and 100 degrees. That's
Go to Qatar and it gets worse. Other general questions? Okay, what I'd like to do then is let's go ahead and bring up the the goals and the policies as modified. And let's walk on through those a little bit. And then once we get through that, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. That way everyone's sort of on a similar page with the latest information. And I really, we appreciate everyone's understanding because this is, things are moving rather quickly as we adjust at the table, just like you're adjusting your life.
And while Marissa is pulling that up, I wanted to take a moment to address what Julianne brought up earlier. So staff is specifically myself and Marissa. And I get this is a super frustrating process. So I totally understand that, and this is not our perfect world. So typically, you know, we would have the time, staff, before anyone in the public gets, not that you wouldn't have access to the documents if you asked, but we would have gone through this and we would have made these recommendations. But that doesn't mean we would take out the recommendations that were coming from the CPAC team. And so they're not deleted from here. They're just, we are giving staff recommendations based on our staff experience with what the county actually has the authority to do and not do, and B, the longstanding expressed interest of our Board of County Commissioners to adopt things as required by the state, and not more than that. But there are always exceptions to that. And so we did the best we could by going through some of the things that are in there. We didn't even understand what it meant and what that would mean. There's other pieces where we need other departments to weigh in, because the community development department, planning and building, we know our world, but we don't know the world of public works, public health, environmental health, and what things are in here that we thought were related to them, or in our emergency management office as well. So we want to give them time to weigh in on some things. And then also allow the public to react to that. If you feel strongly about a policy, or, you know, goal and policy that you feel is really important for the county to do, then, you know, that's your opportunity to express that and why. And so, you know, I understand that this feels really frustrating because you're spending time, but we were trying to do the opposite of what this feels like. We were trying to make sure that you had this information with you tonight. It's not a public hearing, so we're just at that work session level where these are not final. Obviously, we'll be able to take public comment, and then, as you heard Sharifa say, she's also continuing to talk with other folks to continue working on this. So I really didn't want it to feel like, you know, we're doing anything. Don't take it personally. It's just our staff recommendation at this point in time.
With that, I see there, if you don't have a packet that looks like this, I see some on the podium back there. Ms. Morella is holding some up, so you can get those if you want to follow those live.
There's more here too.
Yeah, great. Go for it, Marissa.
So I'm just gonna go through and explain some of the initial staff recommendations that I mentioned. We just got that right before it approved. Goal number one, ensure the protection, and we deleted consideration. The county does not. The county can help to ensure the protection of streams, riparian zones, all those different areas, estuaries, wetlands. But the county does not restore streams themselves. And then some of these, I'll just quickly go through. Basically, some of these changes were just changes in language. So encourage rather than implement. We can encourage the implementation actions identified in plans, but we cannot necessarily, the county is not necessarily implementing those actions themselves. There's some language, there's actually some policies in here that have already been implemented as development regulations. We're already using them now. So on those, we elaborated that we're continuing to protect and encourage restoration of wetlands and corridors, even wetlands. There were some policies, so reduce the threat of aquatic invasive species. There were some policies that they're not even in the local jurisdiction power to dictate, they're more under the power of the state agency to develop. So that was the case with 1.3. And continue to protect and encourage restoration of pleasant vegetation. So this is something we would continue to do through, we require each architect management of applicants for certain projects, and so we are ready to do some of this already, so we want to make sure we have it correct language there. Increase aquatic habitation resilience. This was some of the policies are a little bit duplicative, so this is something we noted here. There's another section we believe actually that's very much the same thing. Not that that's it. I mean, once the consultant reviews it again, you know, we might make us aware that maybe there is something different in it, but right now we just noted it's being duplicative. Then 1.6, implement and encourage measures to reduce the inclusion of streams resulting from wildfire damage and associated impacts of landslide and flooding. So this is the one that staff believe we really don't have any authority. You wouldn't even really know when this would have. You wouldn't have anything that would trigger us knowing about this. So if a wildfire occurred and there was soil running into a stream or something, we wouldn't know anything about it, and there's nothing in our code that development code that triggers
Yeah, this is
something.
Hey.
So,
there's and I don't know if we need to go in through each and every one of these, or it should take a while. But that is a good example of I get the policy behind it, like wanting to put that down, but there is no way for the county, like even if we were to know, hey, there was a fire on Green Diamond property, we as the county do not have regulatory authority to say, hey, now you need to go out, put up silk fencing to prevent the siltation from going down and entering the stream, knowing the next rain is coming. That's just not something we have the authority to do. It's not triggered by a permit requirement or what have you. So it's a decent policy to have, I think, and somehow we should think about, I don't know, in the body of the context to talk about things like that, but it isn't something the county can realistically implement. And I didn't want to have policies in here for the public to think that, to give them a false sense that the county can go out and start doing some of the things that we are just not able to do.
And then again with 1.7, it's changing the language up. The county doesn't restore. We encourage the restoration. 1.8, another issue with it being under, we don't have any authority on industrially managed forest lands. This is DNR, not the county. And then 1.9 was there was some of the policies we didn't really have issue with, but it was more of a issue with maybe they were a little vague at the moment, and if they were explained or clarified, we could comment differently on it, but there were some that we were unsure of because they were in already. Oh no. Again, with goal 2, the county can.
If I may, one second. Gentlemen, do you want to go through each policy? Do you want staff to sort of summarize at the goal level some of the things? How would you like to see that? I'm just in an interest for your time and public's time. How do we want to proceed?
Me personally, just as Marissa is going over the whole thing, with a big picture snapshot. Each individual
So a little higher level.
Yeah.
than What we've been doing.
Right.
I vote for that approach.
So maybe a little higher level.
Like she proceeded,
Yeah.
one at a time, but not.
Yeah.
We can have fun, we'll be around meeting. Yeah. Okay, people can follow up with now. Sorry, I'm having a sidebar conversation I'll share with you.
Thank you.
Is, because we are gonna go high level on the goals that we kept, edited, and some policies that we kept, edited, or struck. And for folks that are interested, because this is a work session, it's still in draft form, for those who are interested. And wanna come and talk to staff to have more understanding about things, we're open to scheduling those meetings.
Great.
Yeah, yeah, because otherwise, I don't think it's worth our
Okay.
time.
So goal 2, and same thing as goal 1, county can ensure the protection, but we do not, implement the restoration. And several policies, just a change in language about continuing what we already do. Those first 2 policies that I do, there's some policies that, don't have any state guidance yet. And we rely on some state guidance to know, how to regulate further. So there was some comments on a few of those about state guidance. So goal 3, revised, we just thought the language, it was very specific and it was very hard to understand how the county would implement in the way that it was stated. So we changed it to, we are suggesting changing it to encourage the resiliency of historic sites, cultural resources and practices to the impacts of extreme weather and natural hazards. We are required by the state to protect such sites. So 3.2, we do have government to government relations, so that is not something that we're just establishing. But it's important to know that we're continuing to maintain those relations. Again, some changes with language. Goal 4. This was one that you believe you had struck goal 4, and you mentioned to combine with goal 6. Because it was, we believe it was similar to goal 6. Goal 5, protect and preserve water quality and quantity from droughts, no change there. We did have some, right on the first 2 policies. Some of them again, not in the scope of how you would be able to implement. And again, looking at revisions based on the fact that we know that our board of county commissioners required. Goal 6 here, so we kept that here, just in changes in language. We've already do some things that are mentioned in some of the policies, so continuing. And then we struck a few at the bottom there, 6.3. Yeah, 6.1 for 5. Goal 7 is still there. And there were a couple of policies there that we were already covered by the WAC. Goal 8 is still there, I don't think we had many changes to go, I don't think we had many changes to goal 8. Goal 9. No changes on the goal language, but we did have changes to the policy. Some of those were mentioned as covered in the WAC already. And some of them, we just noted that we needed our public health department, our emergency, emergency management department to review as well before we could even comment. So there was a couple there under 9. Goal 10, we didn't have any comment on goal 10. And then goal 11, no comments except there was one 11.5 that Public Works they need to review. And that's just because, yes, we have a waste management and that's what this county wanted to. County-wide degree. So just some vague language there that may need to be based on. Goal 12, we left the goal alone. Policies. So, 12.4 film emergency management community review. And then there was some regs there about wildfire protection plans, and the county is waiting for the new regs to be adopted. So that was a comment there, and then goal 13. It suggested that the whole goal 13 in the policies be stricken, and I don't know if you want to.
Yep, so the county, we adopt the all of the building codes, so there's international building code and international residential code. But the state of Washington requires what the county adopts as building code standard wise, and that's what we go with. So we are currently under, we review development standards under the 2021 IDC. And so we just struck this because it's just not it's
Well, and
we
as that consensus standard changes, and it does over time, if the earthquake, if seismic, for example, becomes more restrictive, then we build them whatever it is.
yeah, so the state, so the state will they make changes in the legislation and then it falls down to us and then we adopt those at that time.
And then goal 14, no changes to the language of goal 14. There were some policies in there that we actually already implemented, so which just acknowledging that. And then goal 15. No, I think that just has to do with minimum requirements. And then the last one is goal 16. No changes to the goal, but we no changes to goal policy 16.2.
Thank you. Thank you. Done. So with that and hopefully understand that was quick, understand all of this, probably need to take a deeper read, but at least it brings us up into sort of a common understanding of where we are, understanding we're at a first draft. So with that, I would like to open this up for public comment. Request your comments be limited to 3 minutes. Please identify who you are and generally where you live. And we'll go from there. And Jacob will take the gentleman behind you first. If his hand went up first, sorry, you guys can battle that in the classroom tomorrow.
My name's Anderson Porter and I live in the Hillcrest neighborhood. I just wanted to address how important it is to me that goal 16 does not have any cuts, because I think that goal is really important to have, because making sure everyone has equal access to outreach and resources like that is important to all community members. Yeah. But
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Eckler.
My name's David Backley, Arcadia. I've been up for 15 hours, so I'm a little tired.
Join the crowd.
I would like to see policies for goal 10 that would prioritize protecting Mason County's bus network from like the changing climate. Mainly like making sure there's enough air conditioner in the buses, so people who can't find anywhere else to stay because it's like too warm out, they're like, you know, middle of the county, can get on the bus, ride somewhere, get cooled off, and you know, just get out of the rain for a little bit. And I'd also like to see more policies in here about people paying like bus infrastructure, so that with the changing climate, so for example, where they need more maintenance, we can keep them maintained, you know. The rest of full time's pretty good. I actually like a lot of it. So we get all the same.
All right, thank you, Mr. Eckler. Mr.
Mimi Smith, Shelton. So I take a little bit of issue with how you address, the changing temperatures, the rising temperatures in the summer, because not only is it a problem that it is getting hotter, which number one, the plants aren't used to, number two, the animals aren't used to, and most homes don't have air conditioner. So being stuck in a house with no air conditioner when it's 95 is bad. And we also tend to have dry summers. The rain stops, the sun comes out, dries up all the rain, itsy bitsy spider style. And so not only do you have how dry it is, but also places like Phoenix, places like Florida, most homes have air conditioner. So, but when we don't have it, it's kind of like, you know, that's what I think.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
My name is Alan Ramirez. I live in the Shelton area. And I've just had highlighted, I put some stars next to some policies that I feel pretty strongly about. Goal 3.1. I think it's important, even if it's not this specific language, having something in there, something in goal 3 about enhancing the ecosystems to meet tribal treaty rights, even if it's just something like the county will like seek funding for restoration efforts, like if the county were to help with that, whether it's through like providing just information, seeking for grants for that kind of thing to be done, like the restoration that was done on Goldsboro Creek. Perhaps other bodies of water that exist in Mason County could have that same sort of treatment. Let's see here. Also highlighted under goal 8, policy 8.5. I feel like encouraging the maintenance and increase of county-owned land with natural spaces for the benefit of community health and well-being, and discourage the sale of county-owned forested lands, open space, and waterfronts for non-conservation uses. I find that to be highly important because once you sell the county land, I'd imagine it'd be a lot harder to get that county land back. You know, with the whole land doesn't really appreciate in value from what I've heard people say. So like if you sell the land now, it's gonna cost a lot more to get it back later. And this policy, I think, is important for making sure that we not only don't run out of public space for people to access, but also so that we continue to have more and making sure that that's land that the county already owns, so that it's easier to go through the process of turning that into like a park or something. Which also parks are very important like Mimi was saying, during the hot summer months, where the only real way to cool off is going into like a cool body of water. I know I did that a lot when I used to live out by Lake Limerick. Days were so hot, I couldn't stay inside at all. I also know a lot of the houses here in Washington are built with the cold in mind. They weren't really built to tolerate heat, so they trap a lot of heat inside of them, and they don't really let go of it. I also highlighted policy, goal 11, policy 11.5. Just kind of like a reminder of how we have some resources we have some businesses in the county that already provide these sorts of services. Brady's Trucking comes to mind. So yeah, waste management, they do that with organic waste. Goal 15. I think it's important.
Mr. Ramirez, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't personally met Broaddale Precinct off of 101. And I was just, after looking at the document, particularly impressed with the goal 16.2, which is build and support partnerships because with the community-based organizations, because they will have the facts and the expertise. And I also particularly like the fact that we work with diverse opinions. I think that's very important that we continue to work with all factors of the county.
Mr. Echo, because I don't know your last name, I'll use your first name.
Thank you, sir. My name is Echo Mary, and I moved to Mason County in 2019. And I wanted to move to Mason County, but I didn't want to move. Part of why I had to move from my family's off-grid cattle ranch in Eastern Oregon, we raised cattle and goats and livestock guardian dogs, was because of unintended consequences related to climate change and drought. And as much as our neighbors could rely on government subsidies to float their ranches during times of drought, we were small peas and we couldn't really get by on that. And no one expected the groundwater to change and become contaminated by arsenic, poisoning our entire watershed and the community I lived in and the animals in it. And so I want to emphasize looking 10 years ahead with something like a comprehensive plan and something as uncertain as climate change. There's a benefit to flexibility and vagueness in the verbiage for people applying for grants later on for help with things like this. So I want to say that. And I also want to say that I could very easily clean a barn in 116-degree heat in Eastern Oregon, but 100 degrees in Western Washington lays me out. It kills me here. I was out in the heat domes. I was watering the orchards twice a day, trying to stop the trees from dying. And that was like, I thought I was dying. Oh my God, 50 or 60% humidity is so much worse than the 20% that I was used to in Eastern Oregon. And I was off grid, and so it was 160 degrees, and I was just sitting in it. That's just what I had to live with, because we were poor. I also want to second everything the same gentleman said, because I agreed with just about everything that he was talking about. It's important to be flexible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mary. Ms. Morrell, and then we'll come up to Ms. Rose and
Peggy Burrell, I live in Union. I think creating the first ever climate resilience plan for Mason County is an enormous undertaking. thank you, Sharifa, for your wonderful ability to facilitate a group of folks who may not have worked together before. And I also really appreciate the comments you made at the open of your presentation when you were talking about the importance of not siloing our perspectives and being able to have an exchange, even if the perspectives are in opposition to each other. So as a climate policy advisory team member, my top priority is making sure that this plan has the greatest chance of actually being implemented once it's finished. Our team includes experts from public services, community groups, economic development, as you've heard, tribal representatives, science-based forestry nonprofits, and it sounds like we're getting an opportunity to add more representing the private forestry industry. So we've got the experts, but to give the plan the best chance of being implemented, I think we really need strong collaboration across the fields while it's being developed. This plan, as you all have been exposed to, is built on complex science and data. And to make it actionable, we need a shared understanding of key concepts. So I was using from the document sent out as part of the meeting material packet, goal 4 used to read, protect and enhance the climate resilience of local forests through climate smart forest management. And even though that's been crossed out from the draft, it still works as an example. Because this climate smart forest management or sustainable forest management, those are major foundational ideas. And if we aren't aligned for what it means in the context of this plan, then how are we going to implement it? That doesn't mean if my perspective is different from yours, I have to change mine or you have to change yours. But there has to be a way that we can address the differences in the context of this plan so we can move forward and implement it. Our team only meets once a month, and that's only for 90 minutes. And while the meetings are focused and productive, this is the first and therefore the foundational climate resilience plan. So let's work smart and take advantage of, make the best use of the expertise we have on our team. And what that means to me is I know that Sharifa, you've been meeting one-on-one with some of our team members who can't make our meetings. I really encourage, if possible, to bring together some of our experts and have that conversation so we can, because I know you're on a tight schedule, there's not always time in our CPAC meetings, but to allow us to move forward with some of these issues so that we can actually realize this plan implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burrell. Ms. Rose.
Hello, my name is Casey Rose, and I live in the Lake Limerick area. As someone who frequents these PAC meetings and has heard a wealth of opinions regarding climate issues, I think it's safe to say that we don't all share the same beliefs about the impact of climate change and what needs to be done to protect the future of our environment here in Mason County. Yeah, I think there's one thing that I found most of us have in common. We all carry love for the land that we live on, even if that love looks different. We all take moments to appreciate the awe-inspiring sunsets and sunrises of its sound, the sound of nature on one of our many trails, and the clear skies when the mountains are out. But if we continue to ignore the maintenance and preparation needed to conserve the beauty of our county in favor of industry bias, moments like these will cease to exist in the future. We should be seeking to preserve the wonder of the land we've been graced with, and supporting our neighbors and community who share it with us. It's also important to remember that our natural environment builds resiliency with age and nurturing. This past week, I stood underneath a 400-year-old Douglas fir that survived clear-cut logging only because of its shape made it hazardous to cut. This tree went on to withstand being struck by lightning twice. It held strong in countless windstorms, and it recovered from multiple wildfires. And it continues to grow even more resilient as it provides habitats for wildlife and a deep canopy for visitors to marvel at. Aesthetics aside, The young trees being planted to replace old and legacy growth as they're cut down will never be able to compare to the durability of these elder trees with their fully developed bark armor and deep root structures. The climate element should emphasize protecting and maintaining our legacy in old growth forests to ensure that our natural environment is able to withstand and recover from future climate change, as well as provide barriers that will lessen the impact of natural emergencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thanks. I'm Lisa Perry. I'm a resident of Mason County in the Lake Limerick area and Community Relations Manager for Sierra Pacific Industries. I'm here to share concerns about how forest management is addressed in the climate sub-element. The draft for you has some valuable information in it, but it also has some inaccurate and misleading information, especially in the areas of forest management. In our state, forest management is founded on science-based discourse and oversight. It is important that any decisions or recommendations continue to reflect that functional principle, not being impacted by the ideas not informed by science. For context, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, a group of internationally recognized experts in climate change, have repeatedly listed working forests, forest land that is sustainably managed for carbon storing wood products and renewable energy as a solution to climate change, not a problem. Additionally, the Forest Practice Board is our state's regulatory body that is responsible for establishing and overseeing the state's forest management regulations. To answer Commissioner Lewis's question, that board is where the venue where science is reviewed, discussed, vetted, and to ensure that the available information is being used to make decisions, the best available. I won't go through line by line lots of time, but there's a couple of examples I want to bring up, and they were in the letter from Green Diamond and us also. The non-climate stressors list is inaccurate and misleading or way too general, talking about sustainable forestry that's practiced here in Washington. To list industrial harvest or legal sustainable silvicultural practices as stressors is not accurate. It denigrates our professionals who have science degrees, foresters, biologists, and more that manage the land. These professionals use long-term planning and modeling, balancing the protection of wildlife habitat, soils, water quality, climate change, and the needs of society. In the goals section, and some of these have been resolved by the staff listing, listing increased buffers or canopy coverage as general goals on every piece of forested land devalues the science and analysis that has been used to establish the Washington Forest Practice rules that are among the strongest in the nation. Not only should landowner objectives be part of the equation, but a diversity of age classes is a goal of good forest management. As among other things, it provides a range of habitats for a wider range of animals. The county comprehensive plan is not the place to try and rewrite or change those rules for landowners. The place for that work is at the State Forest Practices Board, which the staff is recognizing in their comments, where they use science to guide forest practices, regulations, rather than untested beliefs. The county comprehensive plan's approach in forestry should have an emphasis on supporting resilient, healthy, and actively managed forests. This is why professional foresters and biologists should have been involved sooner in the plan, and we're glad to be involved now. We will continue to meet with staff and consultant to ensure the county's plan is based on science, reflects both global understanding of how working forests are a solution for climate change and our state's strongest forest practice regulations. How's that for perfect?
Thank you, Ms. Perry.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Sutroth and I live in the north part of Mason County. And I've been involved in climate considerations for decades. The climate change crisis is happening now, and we need policies to address this. Mature forests are better at absorbing carbon and should be encouraged. Salmon are an indicator species. Most are still listed as threatened or endangered. They need clean, cold water, which requires healthy forests, not narrow riparian zones along waterways. We need healthy forests to help cool our earth. Entire ecosystems should be considered, as salmon and forests don't exist separately. Therefore, all ways possible must be addressed to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis. Human health and well-being must broadly be considered when creating environmental policies and for all species, including forests and all forest inhabitants. To wit, why was goal number 4 essentially removed? Why was goal number 13 removed? Similarly, goal 15 both seems crucial and within county ability to regulate. In summation, for a 20-year comprehensive plan, this draft is lacking vision and meaningful environmental protections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Scale.
My name is Julianne Gale. I live in North Mason, and it won't be possible to address all my comments in 3 minutes, so I will be putting a lot of it in writing. But I just wanted to highlight that many of the items that were cut were part of environmental justice, which is a requirement of RCW 3670A070. And those things need to be returned to be in compliance with the law. And I will be happy to explain how many of those items are environmental justice and avoiding and helping the county prioritize actions that benefit overburdened communities that disproportionately suffer from compounding environmental impacts and are most impacted by natural hazards due to climate change. I'm literally quoting from the RCW section 9EI. And I think goal 15 is particularly important in that context. Because we need an opportunity for everybody to understand what environmental justice is so that we can be on the same page about how we achieve those really important goals. I would also say that 9EI says that the resiliency sub-element must include identifying, protecting, and enhancing natural areas to foster resiliency to climate impacts, as well as areas of vital habitat for safe passage and species migration. The difference between goal 4 and goal 6 is that goal 4 was about ecosystems, human communities, animals, habitat, water, soil, carbon sequestration, and goal 6 was about industry. And the difference between a plantation forest and a natural forest is great. And I'm just going to quote here from a 2023 peer-reviewed article. This is about globally, but after agriculture, wood harvest is the human activity that has most reduced the storage of carbon in vegetation and soils. There is major disagreements on the climate science when it comes to forestry. And I do not think that can be resolved by individual meetings with consultants or with environmental groups. I think we need to be at the table together. We are neighbors. We need to figure out how to survive together, how to work together, and we need to be in the room so we can talk directly to each other, not in 3-minute public comments directed to you, but back and forth in a way where we can present our science, they can present their science, and we can find common ground, shared values, and get behind a plan that we all support and can back together. There's too much division in this county. There's so much opportunity for us to love the land together, to love the well-being of workers and the well-being of forests, and we need to be in the same room to be able to do that. And so I really encourage that opportunity. And I think that that should be one of the biggest priorities, particularly in Mason County, is to sort out the forestry science and issues and policies and plans together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gale. And I'm gonna pause, I don't know who's next, but please pause, I need to take some notes. Okay. Who else? See, oh, see a hand. Sure, go ahead up here and we'll hit Brian in the back next.
I'm Tom Duffield. I live up near Varsity Island. I'm the son of a silviculture professor who worked for the timber industry for a number of years. And I put in my time setting chokers out of Camp Wilby for Simpson Timber Company, so I'm not hostile to the timber industry. But I am very puzzled by the removal of goal 4 with the implication that those issues are somehow addressed in goal 6. Those are utterly different goals. The one, goal 4, seems to be advocating that the county take some position about preserving the tree cover as a way of sequestering carbon. Goal 6 seems to be addressed to supporting the industry, which is hard to argue it. But I just want to raise the question for others who have questioned the removal of goal 4. It seems like a policy decision that's being made by the Senate. Thank you.
And sir, and before you speak, just one comment. Please, everyone, understand that this is draft. This is round 1. The members of the PAC, I have not read this cover to cover. I haven't had time in the time since I've sat down here to do that. You know, so some of the comments, just be aware that while we say it's removed or it's kept, that is one group's opinion. I do place weight in their opinion. I'm not gonna, hit anyone, okay? But I also understand there are other opinions here, and very clearly forestry has, there's probably been 4 to 6 people that's talked specifically on that topic. And I think we might hear it again.
Come on up.
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Saylor. I am a resident of Mason County, just north of Brockdale Road. I'm also here representing Green Diamond. But I really appreciate the comments been made, very intelligent and very thoughtful. So I appreciate that. I think this is a good conversation. Many of you know Green Diamond. We're a forest management company. We've been here for about 135 years, managing most of the same acres over about 3 rotations in some areas of forest. And climate change is a big deal to us. It's something we think a lot about. It's part of our sustainable forestry initiative, our third-party certification. And so I just thought I would share with you a little bit of how we build that into our company right now. Wildfire risk is increasing across the West. And so during summer months, we have fire equipment on 24-hour standby to respond with personnel who've been trained to do this all through the summer months. We know this is important. We know that the storms appear to be getting worse. There appears to be more atmospheric issues. And so we have made it a standard practice, and we have for years, to make sure that our culverts are oversized, make sure that they can handle the increased amounts of water. We've added bridges in places where we haven't needed to. So these are things that we've done in our history, but also currently to address some of these climate issues. We have a seed orchard where we are breeding Douglas fir trees now that we hope will be drought resistant. We are constantly considering assisted migration of Douglas fir species, potentially from areas that are a little bit more drought prone. We have been pursuing renewable energy projects across the country and across the company. And we're not alone. Our neighbors at Sierra Pacific and Port Blakely are also investing in climate resilience, in improving infrastructure and reducing emissions. Importantly, our forests continue to sequester vast amounts of carbon, more than any other industry that I know of that can do that, while still supporting local jobs, generating tax revenue, and providing forest products that the communities rely on. In short, Green Diamond is not only aware of challenges that are posed by climate change, we're taking real measurable actions to address it. And we appreciate the work this commission is doing, and we welcome the opportunities to collaborate on these things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Anyone else in the room wanting to make a public comment on the climate resilience element? Moving to Zoom land, is there anyone? Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies, I missed one. Miranda, my apologies, Marie is your mother. Okay.
Hey, my name is Miranda Cromwell. I am a property owner in Allen, Washington. And I would like to bring attention to number 15. The technical expertise and skills related to climate change and environmental justice. I think that the county could very easily implement a simple education program for the folks who are looking at this document, touching this document. I think it's extremely important for the information to come from third-party sources that do not have a financial investment in climate-related things. And I think that it is nowadays, it's extremely pervasive that misinformation is rampant. It is extremely hard to determine a generative AI image from a photograph. Most people do not have the eye for it. So misinformation more and more is becoming more and more rampant as internet sources become less reliable and less regulated, and libraries become more underfunded, and it's harder and harder for people to trust the information that they can find. So I think it is important for educated people, scientific research from impartial places to help inform these policies. And I'm really glad to hear that y'all are listening to a wide breadth of folks. And so I hope that continues. And thank you all for all of your hard work on this document. I'm really proud to be from a place that is thinking into the future, our climate future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crumble. Did I miss anyone else in the room? I'm going to jump to anyone in Zoom space that would like to make a comment on the climate resilience. Please raise your Zoom hand. Joshua Wright, Mr. Wright.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Joshua Wright from North Mason. And first of all, I think that I'd like to ask that Goal 4 be brought back. I think it's really important that we build those issues around forests into the comprehensive plan. I'm also quite concerned about the reliance on what I think is being colloquially called local expertise, but is in reality industries with industrial interests that, I think that Green Diamond and SPI are trying to frame themselves as, the experts when it comes to climate change. They're companies and they have an incentive to make themselves seem like the solution. Of course, they do have a role in this plan, considering that they are a big, economic driver. But when it comes to the actual climate science of it, when it comes to, things about clear cutting and those sorts of issues, they are not unbiased. In fact, they're very biased. And we don't want to have an industrially captured process where just because they don't like that, clear cutting is acknowledged as a problem in the plan, that it isn't acknowledged as a problem. It is a problem when it comes to climate change, and it does have it has impacts directly on climate change, but it also has impacts on our ability to adapt to climate change, especially when it comes to water and those sorts of issues. And we shouldn't paper over that and defer to their very biased expertise.
Anything else, Mr. Wright?
Oh, no, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Heath, Kyla, I'm probably saying that incorrectly, but Heath, you're up.
You're doing just fine. So thank you. Heath Heikela here on behalf of the American Forest Resource Council. I do not live in Mason County. I live in nearby Pierce County, but enjoy my time in North Mason County when I get there. I just wanted to call in, and I have had a chance to review the documents and appreciate the efforts and the changes that are being made. I just really wanted to reinforce the comments that Lisa Perry made about really relying on the Forest Practices Board when it comes to state forests. That is where the science is considered and debated rather than trying to pull people together in a room in Mason County to somehow work out really complicated science. That is going to be very difficult. We at AFRC really focus on the management of public forests. So that would be those managed by the Department of Natural Resources and then the U.S. Forest Service. So I'll start with DNR. Right now, actually, DNR has a carbon and forest management working group that they're actually looking at a lot of these questions about longer rotations. Does that benefit us from a carbon sequestration standpoint? Does it not? And I will tell you, the initial kind of model feedbacks on that are saying that what DNR is doing right now is actually about right on from a climate perspective. So I just would really encourage, Mason County and other counties to give DNR the space they should have to be able to make those kinds of decisions about their land base. And then I just would like to remind you that 128,000 acres of Mason County are actually managed by the Olympic National Forest. That is 21% of the entire county space. And two things are important there. First, very little timber harvest is taking place on the Olympic National Forest, frankly. And I did see a reference in one of the plan documents that mentioned, protections going away as some sort of a threat. I will actually tell you that the protections, quote unquote, that are in place for the Olympic National Forest don't fit with climate change and what might be coming. And the example is there's actually a prohibition on harvesting any tree once it hits 80 years old, almost across the entire Olympic National Forest. We know with climate change that we're going to have to be, more actively managing some of these areas, particularly with drought, where we need to help these stands become more susceptible to drought, or more mitigate for drought and so forth. So appreciate the time to comment and look forward to seeing this unfold. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hikala. Ms. Leaf, Karen.
Hi, hey, thank you. I apologize for having to leave early. My allergies are something else, but Karen Leaf, Mason County resident. I just appreciate everyone's input, and I do appreciate the consultants reaching out to our industry experts. As Mr. Saylor said from Green Diamond, they have been managing forests here for 130 years, and they're managing forests that we've all enjoyed. We've seen them thrive and grow, and I appreciate Sharifa reaching out to them and having individual meetings with them to actually get their perspective, not because they're major employers in our community and an economic driver and provide jobs and everything else. I could go on a long time about that, but everyone deserves to have their time to have their voice and their opinion. So again, a wide range of opinions on this, but I appreciate everyone's involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leaf. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to make a public comment on the climate resilience draft element? Seeing none, I'm going to turn back to the room. I see two more hands go up. We're going to start in the back corner because that was the first hand, and then we'll go to Ms. Lynch.
Hello, my name is Michaela Porter. I live in Shelton. I wanted to second a lot of the comments that are being made. I think that goal 4 is very, very important. And I also think that goal 15 is very important. No, they're not permanently removed, but I'm just saying that I do think we should consider adding these back in. I also wanted to circle back to comments made previously about the comparison that you made between, temperatures in Washington versus temperatures in other parts of the country. I grew up in Midwestern Missouri. I'm used to full seasons, full winter, full summer, tornado season, all the kind of things. And so comparing temperatures from other areas of the country is not very beneficial compared to the climate and ecosystems that we have here. So I think we need to take that into consideration. And I also wanted to say that I appreciate your guys' eye contact. We're making comments and the acknowledgement of the things that we're saying. And we do notice that and we appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Porter. Linda.
Linda from Williams Road. I was just gonna have a quick comment, but then I heard the DNR guy talk, and so here in Mason County, some people don't think climate change is a real thing, and other people think that it's happening so fast that we can't do anything about it. But actually, here in Mason County, we can do something about it because we are the home of these mature older trees that sequester so much carbon. And I realize that they're mostly DNR trees, so that's something that has to be fought over in court if somebody disagrees with logging, clear cutting of it. But, you know, to cool the planet, you guys, you planners have to do everything you can because we're just really up against big change. I have 5 grandchildren. I'd like to leave them something. And I know that mature forests are different from tree plantation because they're so diverse. And, you know, I won't go into all that. We all know the difference between plantation and an old forest that's deep into the ground, sequestering carbon.
Right, thank you, Ms. Thompson. Anyone else in the room? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comments. Gentlemen, may I suggest a 5-minute break? Is that?
Fine with me.
I agree with your suggestion.
Okay, we'll come back here. Why don't we make it at 7? Well, call it 7:50 on the clock. Give us about 10 minutes, a little less.
All right, there you go.
All right, we're good to go. I would say, one, I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank PAC members, staff, and all the public. I had some very good comments from members of the public out in the hallway about how the public comment period went. Thank you. I also really appreciate, look, we had some diverse views, flat out, okay? That's okay. I don't pretend, in fact, I am quite confident the 5 of us at this table are not gonna resolve those differences. But, good, we got a chuckle from Mr. Wilkerson, that's always good. But you know, what we can do is listen, we can try and start to help and facilitate and maybe try and find some common ground here. So with that, I guess I would just start with, given this is, you know, we have a report that is draft that would be, that we need to get some more input from members of our community on. That report will then become an element. We do have a draft set of goals and policies that, you know, staff was able to find some time here. Granted, it was today, but nonetheless, they put some good thought and blended in a lot of the considerations that are within the county. They understand what I think some of the expectations of our county leadership combined with you know, some of the expectations of state. I acknowledge there are differing of opinion. We very openly have that. I'm thinking tonight, what we should seek to find is first our thoughts combined with what guidance would we provide going forward. And maybe go from there. So with that, I'm just gonna. Anyone?
Yes.
My mic's up. What?
Just, you know,
Bob, you're next.
I appreciate all the effort that the staff went into to streamline this and take a lot of the redundancy out of it. And from my perspective, the county should stay in their lane when it is a result, as it relates to this comprehensive plan. So anything in here that is already covered by DNR or state regulations or state laws, we don't need to get involved with. We don't need to have language. Maybe we could refer to them. We should. But we don't need to create new language and new sections and new goals and policies that may be in conflict with state regs or DNR regs. And as I look at goal 4, a lot of comment on goal 4, I don't see anything in there that's not already covered in DNR. If there is, let me know. But that, I mean, that's my thoughts. My other thoughts is I'm all about environmental protection. And if I could change anything, I would change all of this to environmental protection. And make it real simple. Protect the environment wherever we can. I'll leave it at that.
Bob, you were quick.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that got lined out. I'm curious, where did this originally come from? Because about a third of the goals and stuff got whacked out. Is it a shopping list from somewhere?
You're talking about where it originally came
Yeah,
from?
yeah. Revenue.
Jury funds.
Yeah. So some of the goals and policies were from the original or old comprehensive plan, and they were modified based on conversations we've had with the CPAT. But the great majority of the goals and policies came from a resource that Commerce had put together. It's called the Climate Menu of Measures. So they have a large Excel sheet that has a list of goals and policies. We went through those and we identified which ones we, as a consultant, based on our work with the CPAT, have identified as relevant to Mason County. We compiled those and organized them and sent them out just 10 days ago, and that's what you saw. Therefore, there's that, all of that review that came from the county just now. But much of those, to answer your questions, came from a resource that's called the Menu of Measures that was put together by Commerce as part of their guidance for developing the climate element.
So it was a shopping list, okay.
Question. Okay, so staff has looked at and and I'm not saying changes one way or another, right or wrong. Question, given the items that are struck, given the appendix portion of that document, there's like 50 some pages. How has staff had a chance to, review that to see what if those still apply, or how does staff think that that's going to work as far as if that whole appendix of the 50 some odd pages of supposedly supporting things related to these goals and policies?
Staff has not had a chance to review it again. But the appendix is basically all the work that the CPAT has done. Doesn't mean all of that's gonna be turned into, transferred over into golden policy. But
Sure.
it's just like a working document showing the progress of the CPAT.
So it's kind of like, for lack of a better word, like working paper, so to speak, or working documents to which may or not get supported as far as goals and policies.
Yeah, whatever Sharika can probably explain it better, but only some of the goals and policies, it was based on a rating, correct? Whether that transferred over to the actual element in the workbook.
So, the appendix is something that we are still working on. It is something that's evolving alongside the document itself. So it's not something that we are done with and we're not touching it. So as we evolve, as we remove some goals and policies, we'll revise some of the information that pertains to those goals and policies in the appendix. If we choose to remove some, we will remove those from the appendix. If we choose to add some, we are still working in that Excel workbook. So those two things are happening in parallel. The appendix just adds a greater level of detail that is not all transferred into the heart of the document itself. But they're both evolving. We'll make sure that they are done in parallel and they will read well side by side. They won't have conflicting information.
Okay. Thank you.
Speaking of science, I've heard outside this room, I guess clear cutting's a big issue, which I have no background at all in, but I've heard people say, well, you need the old forests to stay forever, yet there's all this carbon sequestration. But I've heard other people say, no, you need to cut them down, and the young trees grow fast and it's even worse sequestering. So I don't know if it could happen, but I personally would like to hear both sides talk interactively about their points of view and defending their points of view scientifically. But science has been wrong. When I took astronomy a long time ago, the universe expanded, contracted. Now they say no, it started with a big bang, that kind of thing. So, and also there's incentives, financial incentives, League of Women Voters that were involved. There's some state land apparently that they wanted to give over to be cut, which they objected to, but I don't know. I mean, do we have to take positions on some of these things in our comp plan? I don't know. Or can we say, this group says this group says that? I don't know.
My thought is if we're somewhat going to be forced down to take a position to some degree, so for example, if we say, if you mentioned the topic of clear cutting, should somehow we reach a consensus to say it's bad or it's good, and we take a position one way or the other, we heard now less than 8 members of the public speak, and there were some very differing opinions. Again, I'm interpreting, I'm not a forestry expert, nor do I intend to have understood everyone that spoke, because, as stated, 3 minutes, and that's not a long time, but there's other ways to provide comment. And I'm sure some of that's gonna.
But I personally don't believe that the PAC needs to take a position on clear cutting.
No, I don't.
Well, that would be my thought. I mean, if that's regulated by the state, or the private timber companies are regulated by the state, so what can we do about that?
Well, so when we think about this, as I sat here, what I thought about was, there were some speakers that, talked about, let's preserve, have more old growth. And then my thought was, well, what economic impact that has, and that's a sector element we looked at this a couple weeks ago. If we, have longer old growth forests, if you will, we have less timber harvesting, how might that, I'm guessing, impact the ability to build homes? And that's another big issue here. Okay. How does, where is the right of government? And while we're sitting at the county level, even at the state, what right do we have to direct Green Diamond to do X or Y? How much old growth forest do you need? Okay, and that's probably again very open for debate. There's 128,000 acres in the Olympic National Forest. I'm just quoting a number that was stated. Okay, and if I got it wrong, I'll take the hit and someone can put the right number in. If we let that grow, is that, do we need more? Are we trying to make up for other areas of the state, the world? I mean, it gets into a very hypothetical, question, and we're trying to do something a little simpler here.
Unfortunately, we can't do jack about that because that's land
I know.
controlled by the federales.
That's right. We have federal, state, private lands, we have private lands with folks owning a few acres to, Green Diamond, and as very, as Brian stated, across the country, it's particularly Washington, California, is significant. Oregon too. And
well, they've been around for 100 some odd years. They must be doing something.
This is Simpson or Green Diamond, but yes, and that's where I just sit back and I go, it's. You're biting to say, so let me.
Oh yeah, come on, come on.
So, I would be real interested, but I won't do it tonight because the crowd's thin. I'd be really interested to ask our cedar stewards, because one of the policies that was drafted in here, and I don't know if it's struck out or not at this point, was bury utilities underground. Because it's less of a hazard, particularly for striking fire for electrical. Okay, so if that costs $10,000, is it worth the price of a home to increase it $10,000? Or is affordable housing more important and above ground line, but a $10,000 cheaper home? And I think that's a fair question. Now, we sat, a week ago, we sat here and we had one of our members of the public stand up and say, look, you've had this group of folks, the senior stewards here for the past year, and their number one focus area is affordable housing. So do we really want to start writing policies that is gonna, quite frankly, increase the price of a home?
Taking
I don't-
that particular subject.
Aren't we like doing some mission creep here?
We could be about, I'm trying to, I mean, ultimately, as we sit down and do some of this, I'm trying to figure out how to pull it forward. I mean.
Well, in the case, that one object as far as utilities underground.
Yeah.
It's already in Allen's code.
Well, I understand it's in most codes, but nonetheless, it still creeped into this. It was in
Well, that was part of the shopping list.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
But you're right, there's a lot of moving parts. And I think financial is significant. And I don't know if it's true or not, I don't have a clue, but suppose it is true that the old growth captures more carbon than if you clear cut it and go up.
Right.
But how much is there different? And the economic benefits, does it overrule having more carbon sequestration if you don't do it? And then you talk about jobs and homes and all that, so.
I honestly don't think we're gonna get an answer to that question. We heard some very strong opinions, very passionate opinions, and I'm not questioning the individuals. I am simply saying there's some very different perspectives, and people were speaking with confidence. Maybe that's the right word. And, we're gonna get folks in the room and it's not us, we're not gonna do it, but do we really think they're gonna agree? And number two is, we're Mason County. Isn't this truly a state level type issue that, a broader group? And, how in the world do you balance economics versus climate change? Because, some of the predictions are very grim. And I'm gonna go back to a comment I made a year ago. Where's the standard? And we don't have one. And that's just an issue we're gonna have. We asked, what do you plan for in climate change? And the answer was use best science. Well, very clearly, there's a lot of opinions on what best science is. And there was it. The years passed and,
Plus there's a vibe, oh, sorry, Jeff, but there's a vibe of, we have the science. Trust us kind of thing. I hear from both sides. Like, don't worry your pretty little heads over it. We know what's going on, but then, like you said, very confidently, the other side says the same thing. We've got the science, the other side is misinformation, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't have a clue.
To paraphrase a kindly, mature woman on a commercial, where's the beef? That's the question we need to ask. You say this, they say that. I think we need to see the proof.
A couple other major things, I think. Broad, I'll make a broad statement.
if I can, the other side though is, in what jurisdiction does Mason County have to direct Green Diamond or the Olympic National Forest to go do anything?
No, I'm just saying that these people, A and B or C and D or whoever, say this stuff. And we not just ask. Show us what you got. Prove it.
I guess
You
we
know,
can.
I mean,
I don't believe.
You can always ask. And they
Yeah,
can
I
always
don't
tell you
believe
there's
I'm in
no
a
way.
position to evaluate the.
But it answers the question that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
May not like the answer to it too.
Mr. Jeff.
Now, in going down through the goals and different and in my case, kind of going away from the environmental side for a moment, not against it, but just other subjects. It seemed like
these goals and objectives, goals and policies set up in this were weak in the health issue. That was one of the 11 sectors. Because I mean, let's get real. If you don't have health, it's hard to enjoy the rest. The other thing it seemed
What do you see as policies that we can make?
I'm just saying it's weak. I'm not here to write the policy at this time. It hardly addresses anything really. For example,
gets into the medical community,
right,
and a lot of other things. And again,
for example,
yeah,
but for example, and I don't know what areas we're going to address within that, but Mason County, and I've brought it before, statistically has more disabled people percentage per capita than most of the counties in the state of Washington. Almost double like King County. And almost double the US average. So that's one area. The water resource area. Okay, if you don't have water, you don't drink, you don't live. Okay. So I don't see the policies, I don't see the goals really formatting anything, coming to any agreement on anything in this document as to what we should be doing. It's tangible, it's measurable. In other words, okay, let me go bigger picture. The goals, I've always been taught the goals are measurable, objectives are measurable.
You're thinking smart goals.
Yeah, I'm having trouble looking at these goals and seeing that they're measurable. Okay. When I say okay, I'm not asking you to agree with me.
Yeah, no, nor did I respond.
Yeah. And then, third area I brought up, looked into was like addressing, the waste management. Again, to me, it just seems weak. To me, it's kind of interesting looking, this is going back one or two meetings. Here, all this effort's been put into recycling. And yet we're only recycling 1% per capita.
And we don't do glass or.
Yeah, and all that, but again, and I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if we're gonna omit, not do something in that, then again, I'm always a believer you should put it in writing to say, okay, we're not gonna address this, or we've looked at this, and at this point, we're not addressing it, or something, to that degree. It was kind of like when I raised here a few meetings back when I was talking about the land use element, and our plan, Mason County's plan, did not address anything with wildfires. And that's and what have you. I'm not saying it's right or wrong at this point, but they addressed it, but it's not addressed in our plan, what our approach is. And lastly, I think I understand, the comment was made about referencing or not referencing, like the emergency management thing. But I think, like we did with parks, the portions that apply, I think we can reference and reduce that text, the amount of text that's in different sections by just simply referencing where it does apply. In other words, yes, it doesn't cover the whole rule, got it. But where it does, reference it and don't go into the big spiel or, to a spiel about what it is. They keep moving the document forward, thereby keeping the document more streamlined and more focused. I'll stop there. I think.
You sure?
Yeah. I would add something.
I
keep beating the same drum I always beat. We're working on a plan that's 20 years. It's goals and policies. Okay, we can't measure that today. We can measure it 20 years from now. But now I want to highlight some words that keep repeating themselves in these documents that were not crossed out. Protection, restoration, encourage, continue to protect and encourage, continue to protect and encourage, continue, encourage, restore, ensure and protect, continue to ensure and protect, support, continue to encourage and restore. Continue to restore, support the establishment of restoration, protect and preserve, support. You understand where I'm going? Yeah.
Our support's,
I mean, it's, what we're working on here, we can't measure. We're working on goals and policies. And, you know, I don't know what else to do with that other than ensure that they meet the
Well,
goals. and
continue
policies.
means that we are.
We can't make
currently
laws,
doing-
we're not making laws.
And I like that, Bob, is, you know, a third to half, third certainly would continue. Which means we're already doing something on whatever that topic is, and I don't, you know, obviously, we didn't get to that point. You know, so that gives me some confidence that at least we're somewhat directionally correct.
I mean, we're gonna be here a long time if we keep trying to beat this up.
Yeah.
This young lady here is gonna be a grandma.
well, the other,
I wanna be a great grandpa, great probably.
the concern, but, you know, taking your point, and I appreciate it, but taking the point, this commission, not parties here, but this commission that works, shorelines, took a long time to grind it out. Nothing, how do I say this? I always say is, if we're still going forward, it may be slower than you know what, but we're still going forward. We're doing something more than what we had before. I don't disagree that continuing different things is hard to put a measure to it. But, you know, the flip side of that is, you know, when you look at, just take water and how it's used and not used. You know, there's one side of the science is saying, okay, we gotta slow down, we gotta quit using so much of the aquifers and what have you. But the interesting thing, for all the people who exist in Mason County, graphically, I'll put in the graphic sense. The amount of water we statistically use for all the people, all the citizens of Mason County is equal to 9 3/4 acres of the UGA in the city of Shelton. So I'm not disagreeing that it needs to be reduced, but I'm saying we need to, some of these things can be quantified or need to be reviewed. The continued part's correct, maybe in the policy. But we need some part of it reflecting, you know, are we making progress or not? In other words, it's great to keep saying this, but if we're not making progress overall, maybe we need to, you know, change the policy, or maybe change the goal or something. That's my 2 bits on it.
You're halfway through your 60 minutes.
Thank you. The other thing is, we need to get data that's accurate in there. I noticed the rainfall total chart in the 100-page document was different than the one in the emergency management, you know, significantly different. So
Refront, if I may, I don't know if you caught Jeff's comment, but there's, you know, put my face in there. You know, sometimes there's differing data sources, and so it's a little confusing. So be aware of that. Couple of questions I had are more just observations, you know, and I don't know if this policy is still in there. You know, we talked about, you know, oh, this one was removed, but, you know, plan and build facilities, utilities to avoid withstanding flood and storms. Okay, again, we build to code. Develop and implement a strategy to expedite debris management from down trees, blocking roads for after a disaster. So my question is, you know, this is, you take that back to the group. So obviously the existing process has failed. It doesn't meet whatever the standard is. And I guess my real question would be, you know, who on CPAT, and I expect Ms. Swanson, Loretta Swanson probably has had some experience with this, and there may be others, but who has actually been responsible after a disaster to manage the people, the equipment, the materials, and the financial requirements to recover from a major disaster? Okay. And, you know, so when you sit back and you start to, you know, and I'm just taking an experience on an air base after a couple of typhoons coming by, and, you know, with people saying, I want to go back to work, I want to get out of my house, and we still have down power lines. Well, when will you get them up? I don't even know which ones are down yet. we've only covered a third of the base in our damage control assessment. And it's, people have high expectations that everything's going to be fixed quickly. It's very different with limited people, resources, and materials to actually make those decisions. So I challenge goals like that, or, promote interconnecting street networks to provide conductivity and redundancy service potential evacuation routes. I would love to have Loretta Swanson and her team in Public Works, who are responsible for county roads, not all roads, particularly the interconnecting ones, weigh in on that. I mean, basically, to have that in here, I'm assuming there's a problem. So what are the problems specifically that this group found that needs to go be fixed?
It all depends on what disaster it hits.
Well, and that's part of it. I mean, so, I am very confident tip cap, if we were to start to discuss new roads, and we have briefly, interconnecting major corridors are a key piece of that discussion. Again, more for standard flow of traffic for residents and citizens and business, focusing on residents and citizens, okay, not business. Not what do we need in a disaster? So those things are out there, so moving forward, what I might suggest, I'd like, Jeff, what you were saying, and that is use the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan for many of the items. We discussed the earthquakes, floods, et cetera. There are a number of topics in there that at least the response to an event is covered. And what I really like about that plan is it's multi-jurisdictional, including, I believe, city, county, state, and even has federal concurrence on FEMA. Yeah, and it's current. Thing's not 24 months old, so maybe it's been written in the last 36 months, but I think we can draw from that, and it has it is 49 actionable items in the back. Scanning, not reading every one, many are underway, and talk to some of the at least response issues that we've already covered. Some of the others, not so much, so we're going to have to address maybe some of the health issues for the longer periods of time. And I guess a question at some point we need to address, I think I know the answer, but it's like, hey, not every home has an AC unit. Do we want to commit the county? Do we want to suggest the county potentially fund that? Or do we simply say we will seek, other sources of funding? And I bottom line is I see a gap because the whole state's doing this. I don't know, but so I like the multi-jurisdictional. I would suggest if someone has CPAT reviewed the Kitsap County climate element?
I haven't, and I
Okay.
don't believe the CPAT has.
Yeah, I took a scan at that. I think staff has already done a very good job at my number one recommendation, and that is actually a published plan. And it has the changes we saw in the language with the policy and goals is exactly what Kitsap has published. And that was about a year ago. I really like that. So I'm really impressed with what Kel and Marissa have done at that level. I think on the climate mapping tool, I think we need to very much zero in on the planning period. And again, not knowing what's been initially at a draft level considered for deletion. But if we have language that says, don't build where sea level rise might occur, then we need to define sea level rise. We can't simply say, don't build there and leave it unstated, because if we say, no kidding, it's 5 feet above where it is, and one model does provide that in about 75 years, then that's a very different zoning element that also needs to be taken through the entirety of economic development, through housing and everything else to potentially deal with that.
And last week we looked at some stuff that said it was 9-inch rise.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
if
we need a consistency,
No,
like
I-
we talk about a standard,
no, that absolutely, yeah, no,
and that's what,
I,
you know, Will, at this point, I'm not sure how much more we're gonna gain from
yeah,
conversation about this. You know, it's
well,
8:25,
Yeah.
and
So-
I just don't see where we're gonna get anywhere. But
So what advice are we giving? What I think I'm hearing is this list. Is use the hazard mitigation where it's appropriate. It may need
or
to be,
refer to it, yeah.
yeah, refer to it. It may need to be updated with regards to the degree of climate change, because it is a couple of years old.
Right, as
It
Steve
does-
mentioned earlier, yeah.
It does reference the right document. Define a standard, how much sea level rise, the change in precipitation, whatever the issues you use, and very importantly, on the UW tool on sea level rise, the 50-50 standard or the 1% standard. The extreme sea level rise standard, that needs to be very clearly stated. Need more look at the health of people and what we might be able to do. I think I heard that. And gentlemen, I'm just reading, so if you disagree with something, we can strike it. If I miss something, we can add it. I like the measurable goals, but I don't know how to do that. I default to Mike's position on that.
I'd say leave it open.
Yeah.
I was like, a compromise,
I think,
if it's possible.
as someone somewhere needs to look at all these elements and deconflict them. Okay, and I understand, I'm sort of looking at the screen right now and the big smile and saying, okay, certainly we at the table will do that. We've read everything. Okay, we're not perfect. We will make mistakes. Okay, so certainly many of the folks in this room who are on your team have also reviewed it, so they can help identify those conflicts. When those conflicts occur, that doesn't mean the change occurs in climate resiliency. It could change another element, but it does need to change, and they do need to align. Good luck with best science. I don't.
If I may just respond to that for the next step of us, once we have the goals and policies and we're happy with them, the next step is for me to go into all the other elements of the comprehensive plan and all our team that's working on them and seeing which policies would fit. Say, for example, we have a climate related policy about transportation. We look at that policy and see, does it fit better in the transportation element or the climate element? So yes, the process of me sitting and talking with all the production staff that worked on the other elements is part of our timeline, and it's something that we plan on doing. So I completely agree with you, and I just want to reassure you that it is part of our work plan.
Thank you. I guess the last would be, we need to be very mindful of the authority that the county has and doesn't have. But at the same time, it's a big team effort, and I don't know who all pulls it together. What have I missed, or what have I overstated?
I think maybe I missed it, but one thing was, okay, that you did alter, or there has been some ideas, at least altering the goals and policies. And just making sure that going back through the appendix before we try to read this again. And
That's what she said she'd do.
Yeah, and the appendix will not be part of the element, Okay, that we discussed in the beginning.
And is that the case? Is that your understanding?
It will still be an appendix in the comprehensive plan. So it will be issued with the final document, but it won't be part of the body of the element. Obviously, this is our current plan. If the consensus is not to carry all that information into the final document, that is at the end of the day a board decision. But the current plan is to carry it forward. If the board disagrees, we're happy to pull it out.
As one member, I'm fine with it not necessarily being in the detail, but and it's as far as the end of the document goes.
I'm very nervous about some of the language that's currently in there. We heard some very differing views.
Mm.
Experts.
So
today.
that's why I'm saying, first cut, reconcile what's been proposed changes here, do that and see how that reflects before we read it again.
Based on, and I understand that you have not had a chance to read this. Based on what you saw, are you more inclined to accept the goals and policies original, no changes, or with changes?
I'd say with changes, I mean, staff is in the correct position.
Definitely with
To
changes.
review this
There's
and,
all kinds of problems I had with the first one.
we gotta trust staff.
Yeah, no, reason I say that then is, so moving forward, at least the going in is with changes is the guidance we're providing. Okay, so
Yes.
staff can send the goals and policies with their edits, but the position of the commission here is, for now, recognizing there's a lot of discussion to yet go forward, but we'd be more inclined to accept the staff recommendation than to reject staff recommendation as a general path forward.
I can see one other thing that contractor and staff could do too is, obviously it appears there's a big confrontation point between goals 4 and 6.
10, 15.
And 15, and as much as possible, hammer that out for us ahead of us so that we can.
Yeah.
So we're not hung up in RCWs, we're not hung up in statutes or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's right, but at least get some of the legwork out of the way with those 3.
So be aware that the spreadsheets in the back talk about clear cutting and mono repopulating the forest are negative stressors. And that is going to be, I suspect, based on the conversation, that will be a spirited discussion.
Yep.
I have a question for the consultants. I'd say her name, but I'd probably butcher it up. It sounds like you're gonna reach out further to entities that haven't been involved so far, which I think is great. My opinion is all information is good. At some point, do you anticipate reaching out to the 2 sides we're talking about tonight, having them in the same room, debating each other and maybe agreeing with each other? I don't know.
Cage match?
I mean, I would like to sit in on a session like that, because I don't have a clue which way I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the consensus that we're gonna try to reach with those groups is which references do we want to use? Because we're not producing a scientific study here. We are producing a guide for the county to utilize. So if there are clear references that the groups agree on, at the end of the day, they all want to base their decisions and approaches on best available science. And if it is hard for us to find that consensus offline, yes, we'll absolutely bring some of them together into a meeting so we can have a productive conversation that leads us into policies where we can put a language into a report that is not contentious, but moves us in the direction. Because at the end of the day, I think everyone wants healthy forests in Mason County. The larger picture goal is shared. It's the nuances that may be in conflict a little bit. So we want to make sure that this document provides things that do not hinder economic production while maintaining integrity of our forests. So we'll try to work out a way to find the shared agreements and push those into the plan. If we can't find them through the separate meetings we're having with them, we'll bring them all together and have hopefully a productive conversation. And you're all welcome to join in on any of those if you're available.
Yeah, I think I like that. I think part of the challenge is some basic definitions. What is a healthy forest in terms of healthy forest for the purpose of forestry and production of logging and wood, or carbon sequestration. There may be some differing definitions on some very basic terms. And it could be an interesting discussion. All right.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on the guidance? Missing.
Let's start with that. I mean, that's major.
Have we missed anything?
I don't think so, but to address Jeff's point, or maybe yours earlier, I know I took a whole bunch of notes on, especially on 4, 6, and 15, I believe it was, and so. And I saw Marissa doing as well. And we also noted where we need to pull other people in, other county people and maybe some outside folks as well. Emergency management, we never had a chance to talk to on some, different issues, so. We will also, and of course, working with Sharif.
Yeah, however the team comes together.
So these,
Okay.
I'll try to, good discussion.
I think we're about done.
We have solar power in one. Figure that one out.
And don't forget our wind power thing, yeah.
No, that's a separate meeting down the road, different issues. So.
You know what, I need a road trip on the other side of the mountains, yeah.
I
make a motion to adjourn this.
Second.
meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the public, for